So yeah, it's good to be with everybody here today. My name's Sean Garvey. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Momentum. We've been around for nearly 20 years now. Many of you may formerly know us as the Grant Farm. That was our corporate identity for the better part of 18 years. And the last 2 years, we've been known as Momentum or Build Momentum. We design, develop, and deploy advanced energy and transportation innovations in partnership with clients, oftentimes bringing early stage or pre-commercial technologies together with a corporate or strategic partner or customer into a single package. And then we develop the funding and other resources necessary to demonstrate the technology. So we've had a long string of big successes in the energy storage space. We were the developers, the concept developers for the Miramar Marine, $20 million Marine Air Base microgrid called Semper Grid. That's the title I came up with. I'm particularly proud of that. That married various distributed energy resources on base down in San Diego County with a large energy storage system. We also developed the funding for the Port of Long Beach mobile microgrid, a partnership with Tesla and Schneider Electric, that as well as a $10 million deployment of a first-in-nation mobile microgrid system capable of powering the entire port at various times during emergency systems. We've also done quite a bit of funding on the early stage side. We were successful earlier this year with Repurposed Energy in their utilization of Second Life battery systems to create microgrids and energy battery systems for groceries. And that's a project that's underway right now, and a whole host of others. In all, we've done about $5.5 billion worth of projects, with about $1.5 billion of that made up with public grants and incentives. So with that said, I'm going to quickly pivot to the sources and resources, at least on the public side. Larry's the specialist on the private side. On the public side of available funding and resources that we routinely go to source available public funds or evaluate available public funds to leverage against private capital in the energy storage and battery space. Obviously, you've heard a lot today about the Grand Energy Challenge. You probably already know that the initial program was $150 million. Most of these solicitations associated with the Grand Energy Challenge have gone out already. There are still several in the pipeline. But that was an exceptional program, frankly, from the Department of Energy under Trump that funded a great deal of early stage energy storage projects and promises to continue to do so. And for those of you who are wondering, obviously the Grand Energy Storage Challenge is easily available on the Department of Energy website, searching you should also be aware that there's about to be a small business innovation research RFP released. The topics were released on November 9th. This is SBIR. And the solicitation opens in December with, I believe, a 60-day solicitation window with a number of topic areas that are proposed for funding directly related to energy storage and battery. This is mostly early stage TRL 1 through 5, but it is a good source for an initial $200,000 in capital, ultimately in excess of $1 million if you successfully complete stage 1. But that you should all be aware that solicitation is about to be released. I can't forget on the California side, obviously, the 3-year EPIC investment plan is what dictates grant making from the California Energy Commission specific to energy storage. You've all heard today, hopefully already, about Lithium Valley, and the Lithium Valley initiative from the California Energy Commission will in all likelihood spur additional investment in energy storage technologies to associate with the Lithium Valley concept. This is a major initiative for the California Energy Commission. Frankly, in the 15 years I've been doing this, I've never seen the California Energy Commission pick up an initiative with quite so much gusto. So be up looking towards additional funding to come out associated with Lithium Valley. And this will be building the supply chain for refining lithium, manufacturing batteries in Southern California, et cetera. We also had the Bridge program, and many of you early stage folks probably are aware that the California Energy Commission Bridge program ended. The first initiative ended about a month ago with applications, but the next application deadline is in February. I will tell you that our intelligence asserts that there were very few applicants to the Bridge program. That's great news. That means there will be additional funds available in the Bridge program in February. It also means that some of the requirements for applicants were overly burdensome, and a number of applicants didn't bother to submit full applications. That makes me happy because we submitted 2 applications, and it means that the ecosystem is less competitive for that funding than might otherwise normally be. But be looking forward to the next Bridge opportunity. Also, currently on the street is GFO 20-304. This is DER systems for bus integration, and medium heavy duty vehicle integration. From my take, I've been at the workshops. I know the ecosystem pretty well. If you have a proposal that meets their criteria for GFO 2304, there's $22 million available. And I'm going to tell you, I don't believe this is going to be all that competitive. So if you're on the line about whether or not you want to take the time over Thanksgiving, and frankly, at this point, it's due December 30th, over Christmas as well, although we're trying to get that put into January, and hopefully it will be successful. This would be an exceptional solicitation to be really creative about. And then, of course, NYSERDA right now has $150 million on the street. And this isn't for early stage technology. This is for bulk energy storage procurement. But it's an exciting opportunity. Obviously, you have to be at or near commercial scale level in excess of 5 megawatt capabilities in order to bid on that funding. That brings me to 2 final things. And I'm sorry, Larry, I'll finish up quickly.
No problem. Take your time.
Increasingly with energy storage, we're seeing local and state government go to bid for energy storage capabilities. For instance, there's a program out right now called through Southern California Public Power Authority, and they're submitting proposals for standalone energy storage systems. Like with New York CERTA's bulk energy storage, this is for later stage, TRL 8 and 9, immediately pre-commercial types of opportunities. But the Southern California Public Power Authority is soliciting for proposals to provide them with energy storage solutions. This is really an important and fairly dramatic development in the ecosystem, where we have local, state, and regional governments and utilities soliciting for energy storage, not for advancements in technology, not for innovation, but just energy storage capabilities at commercial scale. That's a sign of a quickly progressing capability in the space to meet commercial scale demand. And you want to be tracking those opportunities. And there's a whole host of ways to track state and federal procurement opportunities. Planet Bids is one of those. Open Bids is another. Canvas is another. I could provide you 4 or 5. I have a PowerPoint on it. If you text me or email me here, I'll send it to you even before the end of the call. But you want to be aware of this procurement ecosystem because it's different than the grant ecosystem. It's different than the incentive ecosystem. It's often managed by public agencies, but it has an entirely different rationale and purpose. And it is meant to be at scale. These are public contracts, not grants. Final thing I'll say, Larry, if you're not tracking the developments from the team at cleanenergyforbiden.com, cleanenergyforbiden.com, this is essentially the team of experts and specialists, particularly in finance and technology, who have proposed a 500-page document of proposals that for the incoming administration that can be implemented without legislative action. This is huge. If you want to read a 500-page document that talks about the state of renewable energy in the United States and what the leading thinkers on the policy side are thinking of in terms of grant and loan programs, procurement programs, etc. This is the document you want to see. Obviously, some of the things that they're talking about are the expansion of the investment tax credit to include energy storage. There's a lot of conversation that could be among the first things done. The expansion of the clean energy or the development of a clean energy investment tax credit. $5 billion into the Grand Energy Challenge. This is a proposal, a very serious proposal in the Clean Energy for Biden document. $5 billion for the Grand Energy Storage Challenge and an additional $500 million for grid energy and storage demonstration projects. So if you haven't signed up, regardless of your politics, I'm not politicking here, but regardless of your politics, we have an incoming administration. And the most substantive and substantial document that you can find that will detail the types of investment, grant, and credit direction for all clean energy, including energy storage, is in that 500-page plan that you find at cleanenergyforbiden.com. So I'll be done right there, Larry. I apologize for taking so much time, and I'll cede the floor.
Gee, not a problem at all, Sean. That was just fabulous. That's an enormous amount of very valuable information. And if there was some way that everyone in the room could get a list of all of those things, that would just be great. I don't have a list of, like you. I don't have quite an elaboration. I have some comments, and I do have some slides. And my comments are about private equity, venture capital in particular, and then my slides are maybe a little different than what our conference, what the summit has been about today and tomorrow. But I think they would be valuable for entrepreneurs who are here in the group. So I think in general, I think there's just an enormous amount of money available. More and more money, as Sean has pointed out, through the public sector, through grants, through non-dilutive equity, which I think is fabulous, because in the energy space, projects and businesses take so long to build and develop to get to the point of having what all venture people want to see, which is, I don't know if you can read this. Can you read this? Happiness is positive cash flow, right? So that's what it's all about. That's the result you want to accomplish. And so I think there's just, as I was saying, I think there's just a ton of venture and private money available, whether it's angels, families, friends and fools, or angels, or family offices, or traditional financial VCs, corporate VCs, private equity for later stage companies where you're at the PPA stage, where you're building a large, you've got revenue coming in. It's just an enormous amount of money. And why is that? That's because the economy's in this situation where the Fed is pumping money into the economy to try and get things going again. And you can get 10-year Treasury bonds that are paying over a period of 10 years, less than 1% interest, 80 basis points. How is that possible that there could be this huge amount of money, and yet it is so hard to raise money in the venture community, not just in the energy space, but also in information tech and life sciences and all the other parts of the space, the venture space, where we're bringing new tech in to improve the quality of life, both in the U.S. and around the planet. Well, it's difficult because companies are trying to demonstrate that they're making good use of resources. Companies that are already public are they have ample resources at their beck and call. Startup companies are resource lean, and we'll come back to that in a second. And just hold that concept of resources in mind. So So let me switch and put this screen up, and so if you can see this and you can hear me talk, if you can't see this or you can't hear me talking, send me a message in the chat window. So we spent a lot of time today at the summit and tomorrow at the summit talking about technology and technology development and so forth. And when you're building a company and you're looking for venture investors, it might be nice to know what they're thinking about. What are the people on the other side of the table thinking about? And so I'd like to spend a couple minutes going over what's the secret to venture investing. So let me skip over these. And here's the three big questions. It's three questions. It's 10 words. They're all monosyllabic gut English words. Is it real? Can we win? Is it worth it? And the first question, is it real, is all about strategy and vision. The second question, can we win, is all about execution. When we get our team on the field, can we score more points than the other guys? And the third question is it worth it? Is it worth it in terms of the resources we're going to expend? Is it worth it in terms of the money? Is it worth it in terms of our time? These are the three really big questions. So a venture investor wants to look at those. And if you expand those, here's a cheat sheet that we put together. And I'm happy to share this with anybody. My email address is at the end of this presentation. So you can send me an email. I'll send you this. This is a cheat sheet that we use to look at companies as we're evaluating them. And let me draw, whoops, no, that didn't work. Let me draw, if I can. Oh, I can't do it. All right, it's not going to let me do it. So if you look down here, is my cursor on there? Yeah, my cursor's on there. If you look at this line for CEO, you'll see 6 attributes: ability, motivation, character, resourcefulness, experience, and vision. These first 3, you'll recognize those as Warren Buffett's. Those are the 3 things that we look for in a leader of any company, but for companies that are already public and have proven themselves, that's almost enough. If you're in a startup, you need these other 3 as well. You need experience. You need to have been around the block before. Having done a startup is a great thing. Having done a couple is even better. You need good vision for where the technology is going and for where the market's going. But even more important than that is you need resourcefulness. You need to get $5 worth of value for every dollar that you have in the bank. And this attribute of resourcefulness really separates out good CEOs from great CEOs. Let me come back to that in a moment. So the second thing we look for is sales. And we've looked at, in the last 10 years, we've looked at maybe 6,000 companies. And looked at can be as little as reading a paragraph. We've met with, for a couple of hours or more, maybe 600 companies, and we've invested in about 30. And we're doing pretty well with that portfolio. One of my observations is that most of the companies that we talk to don't yet understand the sales process. In the energy space, there are 2 kinds of sales. There are transactional sales, and there are relationship and consultative sales. Almost all of us in this space are involved in consultative or relationship selling. And that's a situation where you have to work with a customer for a year or more before they're going to buy your product. And when they finally buy it, they're only going to buy a small quantity for a pilot. Let me recommend that you get some books on selling. And here are a couple. The first 2 are from Miller Hyman. And they talk about, they help, and the last one is from Neil Rackham. And what these books talk about is the different buyers in an organization that you'll have to get to know. There's an economic buyer, there's a support buyer, there's a strategic buyer, there's a product strategy buyer. Each one of these plays a role in deciding whether the organization that you sell to is going to buy your product. And they all have each one of them has veto power, and they all have a different set of needs. And almost everybody that we talk to hasn't yet developed a way to sell into organizations. So I would highly recommend that you get on board with this. You buy a couple of these books, read them, absorb the philosophy, and then get somebody in your organization, preferably the CEO or the founder or the entrepreneur, who understands this process. Let me go back here to one other thing, which is this point C here. What's your sustainable advantage? What's your contribution? And let me bring up another book. This book is called 7 Powers. It's written by a guy named Hamilton Helmer. What Hamilton does is he identifies 7 different ways in which you can establish an unfair advantage and build a moat around your company that will keep the competitors out. In the energy business, mostly our customers already have a solution for their problem. So you have to knock out an existing competitor. So I would recommend getting this book. And here are the 7 powers. I won't go through them, but the 2 that I see that happen most in our space are network economics and cornered resource. The battery companies tend to have scale economies already. They have large plants. Counter positioning is about how you price. Switching costs is making it difficult for a competitor to come in. That might work in the battery space, in the storage space. Network economics is all about data. And so if you have a way to collect data and maybe have software behind it that does that, that can give you a competitive advantage. Cornered resource is another one. If you have all of the lithium on the planet, to borrow from the session we just left, you've got a cornered resource as long as we're using lithium in batteries. So I'd suggest looking at those 2 things. But get the book anyway. It's an easy read. You only have to read a couple of pages in each chapter. There's some very difficult math after that, but you can skip that. You'll get the ideas right away. So here's our energy thesis. What we look for in the companies we fund. It's really 3 things. It's a fabulous CEO. It's a moat. It's going to be one of Helmer's 7 powers. And it's the exit potential that makes it worth our while, our time and energy and money to provide a return. So let me stop there and open it up for questions and discussion. It's quiet.
Larry, I have a question to you from me. What is your take on public funding as it relates to early stage pre-commercial companies? And here's, I'll just give you like a paragraph of my context for the question. There are folks on the venture side who have differing opinions as to companies that are able to access public incentive monies in order to more quickly commercialize their technologies. And with some folks, there's a prejudice against that companies that need to or want to utilize public funding. And in other companies, there's not that, or with other investors, they see that as a benefit. Where do you fall on that? And is that a familiar argument to you?
I assume when you say public funding, you mean non-dilutive equity.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in fact, it's not equity. It's non-dilutive to equity.
Mm-hmm.
It's fabulous. I think that's great. I think everybody wins in that case. I don't. The more of that, the better. Where are some cases? Who would be against that? What would be the reasons that you would be against that?
There have been an occasional investor or venture group that might suggest that companies that, particularly early stage pre-commercial companies that need to rely on public incentives, can sometimes acclimate the company and its leadership to a certain style of meeting objectives. The objectives of an agency, the funder, rather than the objectives of speedier commercialization and profit.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. That's where the company has a certain objective and wants to accomplish a certain product in the marketplace, and there's this opportunity for funding which is sort of off target, and you go for that, and so it's a distraction, it's a deflection. That happens, that exists. Yeah, right. We would recommend against that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a question. My name is Drew Wong. I'm a postdoc at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So, I've thought about starting up companies and would love to at some point. But I'm curious, a question for Larry. When you think about the growth potential of a company and you're looking for this 10x increase in value over the course of, say, 10 years or something, how do you vision that from an energy technology perspective? Because a lot of the technology needs a lot of capital to prove that it's valuable. It needs a lot of time and runway. And so how do you look at the value of a company that's trying to go after, this whale of an energy storage or energy problem when maybe the beachhead is actually pretty small? I'm just kind of curious if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think what you're asking is how do we figure out, how do we value what the company might be worth at 10 years? And I think we look to the entrepreneur to come up with the initial idea, the initial valuation of that. So a small beachhead is okay in the beginning, as long as it leads to a larger, beachfront, downstream. Energy businesses take longer to develop than information tech businesses. It used to be 5 to 7 years, then it was 7 to 10. I think it's probably beyond 10 now to be successful. And I think we look for an entrepreneur to come in with a financial plan that says this much revenue at this stage and this much revenue at that stage. If you haven't got that, then I don't. One has to question how much have you put into thinking this through. If you have got that, well, nobody believes them anyway. But the fact that you've done the exercise means something, and you've gone out and you've figured out how large some of the markets are and what the potential application is within that market. And what you might get as a subset of that market is, in terms of revenue. So that's probably the softest part of a plan. The physics has got to work. The physics is going to be hard, right? Physics is it's quantifiable, but the revenue estimates are always difficult. And does that help?
No, I just wanted to kind of gauge your perspective on, it's easy to project, really big numbers, but then how do you tail it back and say, this is actually realistic, and we have a viable plan to be able to get to that. Obviously, the technology components matter. And I'm kind of curious in that regard, is I actually see a lot of energy companies, startups who start off in we'll say a hard tech space, in the sense that they have a widget that is going to get plugged in somewhere, and then they switch, as you were saying, to this network economics because the margins are higher, the value propositions change. Just kind of curious what you think about these kind of pivots from hard tech solutions to more data-driven ones.
Yeah, it really depends on the situation and the opportunity. If it's just hardware, we've been doing energy stuff for 50,000 years since our ancestors figured out how to manage fire, and so the incremental improvements, are 10, 12, 15%, maybe. This cost curve that we saw earlier today on the drop in prices of chemistry, battery chemistry, 18% per year. That's phenomenal, but it's not, a factor. It's not the same as we see in semiconductors when we go from, for example, 10 nanometers to 7 nanometers. The increase in processing power opens up a whole new avenue of applications, a whole new area of applications that we couldn't solve before. So whereas I can only think of 2 or 3 cases in the last 100 years where we've discovered a whole new area of applications in the energy space. One of them being oil, which allowed us to drive and fly, and the other being nuclear power, which allowed us to have massively destructive weapons in nuclear medicine. And so we haven't, the hardware guys. I'm a hardware guy. I've spent 50 years developing hardware, literally, and so I love hardware. It's very difficult to get the margins, to get significant margins. On the other hand, with data and software, you can get enormous margins because it's so cheap. Releasing your software another time is basically free, and capturing the data is just more storage to do that. So I would encourage pivots. I would encourage maybe not pivot, but expansion rather than pivot. If you can do hardware and incorporate the software and the data, that's even better. I think we're always looking for hardware that makes a big difference. The problem is making a big difference. It's got to be more than 5 or 10%. The energy business. The difficulty in the energy business is that it's a commodity. Electrons are the ultimate commodity, right? And in fact, it's worse than a commodity. You're competing on price. A commodity competes on price and delivery. And in the energy business, not only do you have to compete on price and delivery, you also have to compete on safety and long-term viability. Are you going to be around in 20 years? So you got to have so your company has to have those attributes. And so if you come in with a product that's going to be 10% better in price, can you deliver? Is it safe? Are you still going to be here in 15 years to service my equipment? Those are tough questions to answer, and a lot of companies won't move for a 10% change in price, a 10% advantage in price, right? So you got to have some other things. Does that help, Drew?
Thank you, and I'll pass it on to someone else who asked questions. Thank you.
So,
Larry, I'd love to ask Ryan Barr. He's on the line here. He's with the COO of Repurposed Energy. We have a lot of experience with Repurpose, and they're a leader in the space. They've done an incredible job at both public and private investment. Ryan, would you like to say a few words to this conversation?
Ryan's a good guy, by the way.
I agree.
Thank you. It's good to see you both. Hope you can hear me. First of all, thanks, Sean, for the shout out at the beginning of your remarks. We were delighted to successfully submit that proposal in collaboration with them. And we have our eyes on several more grant opportunities, some of which you actually mentioned, and many of them require match funding, which, as you know, can come in the form of cash or in-kind support of all types. And so I'm wondering if you have thoughts to share on some of the most creative or most effective strategies you've seen of bringing in match funding. And then, Larry, you could also potentially chime in on how you would view investment opportunities that could be amplified by grants, 2x or 3x or more?
Ryan, I'll take that first. That's a great question, and obviously you've been through the process with Momentum, so you know how we creatively approach cost share and match funding, and we're pretty aggressive about that. I'll give some concepts. I will say this. This is a really important point to make. We have at Momentum have developed and submitted over 450 successful applications in the last 16 years. We have never said we can't put a proposal together because of missing cost share, missing match funding. If you're coming to the conclusion that your proposal would be exceptionally competitive for any given state or federal program, but for match funding, I'm going to assert to you that you're not being creative enough. And I hate to say it that way, but again, we've never one time, and we've worked with all manner of companies, from fully commercial companies to TRL1 ideas, and we've never had to back off of an application because of match funding. Here's a couple of things that I will say. Generally, cost share does not have to be cash. It can include the entirety of, particularly for small companies, your direct labor, your fringe benefits. Sometimes the direct labor you're not even getting paid, but are donating back to the company if it's early stage enough. Your rental costs, your office costs, etc. And we often find that just with that alone, we're able to come amount of fairly robust cash or cost share campaign. The demonstration period that is required by most state and federal grants, which can be between 6 months and a year, that can often be used as a way with a partner. When a partner or a customer is demonstrating your technology, they're investing and contributing resources towards the successful demonstration of the technology. And that period of time has value associated with it. Sometimes there's the investment of property, there may be grid upgrade, there's going to be direct labor, there's data management, there's tech transfer, there's knowledge transfer, there's the ribbon cutting, there's everything around the project that has value to it. And so you can count those values with most grants in order to make up an additional cost share. I will also say this. Almost exclusively, public grants should serve to leverage private investment beyond simply donated direct labor costs, but actual cash. And we had several bridge applications this last time around in which the applicants were able to go back to their original investors and say, look, if we're successful with a $3 million grant to do a major demonstration project with Pacific Gas and Electric and the city of Oakland, can we count on you for $500,000 in cash in additional investment? And the conversation changes when you're bringing resources to the table like that. And you can make that contribution conditional upon the successful application. And there are, Larry may be able to speak to this, but if you have a $3 million sale of technology to a utility on the line, and you have $2.5 million of it coming from the CEC, and all you need is $500,000, there's probably a lot of folks who will have a conversation with you about making an additional investment, conditional upon successfully leveraging 6 times that amount.
Oh yeah, I would completely agree. In fact, a guy who just finished his PhD at Berkeley came to us in February. He was working on. He had this new technology that he had done work on at Berkeley, and was trying to build a company around it. And he met us with a customer. He came in with a customer, ready to with an order, ready to pay, and so forth. They just needed delivery of the product. So and that was even what are you going to say? No, the most important thing in a company is a customer. You got to have a customer, because then they have a problem and you can solve their problem. And then if you can have some public money in addition to that, that just helps. That just helps. But and he didn't have any. He had in this particular case. But I don't, Ryan, does that help? Am I answering your question?
Yeah, great insight. Thank you both.
Larry and Sean, we just have a few minutes left. So if you want to give some closing remarks before we go back to the main stage for the ending keynote, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I promised to give my email address. Let me just put that up on the thing here. There, can you see that? Yeah, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd be happy to send these slides to anybody that wants them. Sean, do you have some comments?
Yeah, Larry, I've been writing down the email addresses of people asking for the slides, so I'll share those with you after this as well.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Fabulous.
Yeah, from my perspective, thank you very much. For folks out there, please be aware of some of these opportunities that we talked about earlier in the call. I'll send out a PowerPoint with those in them later today, as well as the procurement ecosystem. I also want to say, I think that we're going to be looking at an extension of the California Sustainable Energy Entrepreneur Development Initiative managed by New Energy Nexus, as well as the California Testbed Initiative, which is a program actively managed by New Energy Nexus and still has additional resources. So I'm pitching New Energy Nexus here as one of your go-to spaces, particularly if you're doing work here in California, for funding for energy storage innovation. Thank you.